All right, everyone, apologies for the delay. We are going to get through our study of Dante by looking at the Purgatorio and Paradiso all in one fell swoop, for which I apologize. It's going to be fairly intense in the sense of the amount of material we're going to cover, but I hope that at least it will help a little bit. I suggested to you in the first lecture on Dante that this portrait of Dante that I have behind me here is on the inside of the cathedral that's in the center of Florence. It's called Il Duomo, and this is painted as a fresco on the wall of the church there. And it shows Dante himself inside the cathedral, showing three places that one of which we've looked at already, the Inferno. This one we're going to discuss right now, the Purgatorio, and then this one over here is the Paradiso. And you'll notice in the Paradiso, he's referring to something like a city, the city of God, probably leaning on Augustine's theology here. That's probably Rome, having said that, although you could argue that here in the background, this looks like could be Florence for that matter. And probably it's an idealized city rather than any representation. But what Dante is doing in the Divine Comedy, remember I said that it is mirroring the 3 days of Christ's journey from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. He's going down in the Inferno on Good Friday, going down to the realm of the dead, where the sins are punished that are not dealt with through repentance and baptism. And now he's ascending with Virgil's help up Mount Purgatory. And when he gets to the top of Mount Purgatory, he will ascend to paradise. A better portrait of that here, I think if I can find the map. There it is. This is the heavenly Jerusalem here at the bottom of the picture. Down here, I said it's here. And he's gone through this, down through and passed through Lucifer's backside. And now he's ascending up Mount Purgatory, and then he'll go up into the heavens. So what he's doing here is giving this map is giving a sort of a picture of what is envisaged by Dante, and we're not to hold to it too literally, but on the other hand, he does have some sense of space and time. And I said to you that when Satan hit the earth, he displaced all this material up to the other side, and he also flipped things around so that purgatory is now close to heaven. And when Satan hit the earth, it flipped the world around in this pictorial image. Not so important for the purposes of the poem, but just in the sense of orientation, what he has in his mind here. But Dante is here presenting a view of purgatory. And purgatory, as we all know, is a doctrine of a place that Protestants, at any rate, since the time of Luther, dispute actually exists. A place where sins are purged that are committed in this life from those who are repentant sinners. In Catholic theology, there is a realm called purgatory where the sins that are committed in this life are removed from you via this process of purification. And so it's a third realm between the earth and heaven. And it's the place where repentant sinners go. You go to purgatory. Martin Luther famously, in the 95 Theses that he nailed to Wittenberg's door, disputed the existence of purgatory. He said it was a non-scriptural account. And that was on October 31st, which just passed last week. And some celebrate it as Reformation Day rather than Halloween. But it's on All Hallows Eve, and he disputed the doctrine of purgatory, and specifically the church's practice of giving out indulgences for reducing your time in purgatory. But that doctrine is one that Dante is holding to here in accordance with his understanding of theology that he's had bequeathed to him. I'm going to say a bit more about that in a minute, and suggest that Dante's portrait here depends largely, though not entirely, but largely on a view of God whereby God is unknowable, mysterious. It's part of the theology of mysticism of the medieval period. in which God is unknowable and we can only understand his being in terms of what he is not. So we understand him in what they call the via negativa, the negative way. We can speak of his immortality, his impassibility, his incomprehensibility, etc. We can speak of what he is not, but we can't really speak of what he is. And so Dante, in accordance with that, will conclude the Paradiso with a vision from St. Francis, and largely deal with a mystical apprehension of the divine. From the vantage point, he begins with reason, then he moves to faith, but it becomes very conjectural, imaginative, hypothetical. And I said that informed his understanding of the Inferno as well, where he had gradations of sin, none of which is mentioned in Scripture, and he came up with those levels of hell in accordance with Aristotelian notions of right and wrong and different types of sins from a worldly perspective. To the same degree, he probably is doing something similar here from the vantage point of Christian virtues, the 7 virtues, although these are a standard part of Christian understanding throughout Christendom, the 7 virtues that are needed, but I'll say more about that when the time comes in a few minutes. And I'll say something about what the consequences of what Luther has to say when I come to the Paradiso. So I'll just put that on hold for the moment. But Purgatorio, I'm just going to try and teach you what Dante is presenting here rather than give a critique of it. So in Canto 1, let me see if I can get this up here. Divine Comedy, Purgatorio, Canto 1. And text and translation, Mandelbaum. He begins, remember, he concluded the last of the words of the Inferno was the word stelle, stars. And I said the same last word will be found in Purgatorio and also Paradiso. So he began by seeing a vision of the stars for the first time. When he was in the Inferno, it was total darkness, pitch darkness, can't see anything, there's no light in the bottom of hell. Now, how he sees Lucifer or Satan as he's presented there, remember, it's a mystical vision. He's having it's a dream sequence. He's not suggesting that he saw it per se, but again, we're going to cut him a little slack on this. But he comes out, and he's clearly, when he comes out of that side of the Inferno, he comes out into the other side of the hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, and he sees for the first time stars. And specifically, he's going to see the Southern Cross, which you can't see from the Northern Hemisphere, interestingly. But he will use here an invocation of the Muses in the first canto. And you see it right there. Let's see if I can make that bigger. I can make it bigger. Good. To course across more kindly waters now, my talent's little vessel lifts her sails, leaving behind herself a sea so cruel. And what I sing will be that second kingdom in which the human soul is cleansed of sin, becoming worthy of ascent to heaven. Because, of course, Dante, whether you're from a Catholic perspective or from a Protestant perspective, God being a holy God will not admit any vestige of sin into his presence. We have to be holy in order to enter the presence of God. Dante knows this. All Christians know this. You have to be holy even as the Lord our God is holy. Leviticus 19:2. Without holiness, none will see the Lord. So they need to be cleansed of sin, becoming worthy of ascent to heaven. But here he shows that he is, if we didn't know this already, that he's writing an epic. He again invokes the Muses. But here, since I am yours, O holy Muses, may this poem rise again from hell's dead realm, and may Calliope rise somewhat here. Calliope is the epic muse. There are 9 muses, goddesses of memory. And Calliope is that for the epic. So he is identifying this. If you question whether I was being accurate in depicting this as an epic, there's no doubt in Dante's mind he's writing an epic. And may Calliope rise somewhat here, accompanying my singing with that music whose power struck the poor Pierides so forcefully that they despaired of pardon. The gentle hue of oriental sapphire in which the sky's serenity was steeped, its aspect pure as far as the horizon, brought back my joy in seeing just as soon as I had left behind the air of death that had afflicted both my sight and breast. The lovely planet that is patroness of love. Who's the planet that's patroness of love? Venus. Now there's a different sort of Venus. Remember the Venus that marked the Aeneid was the goddess of eros, of erotic love. This planet is different. This is a celestial planet, and it will reflect divine love, not the love of the worldly sort. It's going to be a purified love, but we'll come to that. But she's that planet that he sees there that made all the eastern heavens glad, veiling the Pisces in the train she led. Then I turned to the right, setting my mind upon the other pole, and I saw 4 stars not seen before except by the first people. And this is the Southern Cross. And in the Southern Cross, he will see a representation of the 4 temporal virtues. When I say temporal virtues, they're for this age. These are virtues that are recognized by the pagans, by Aristotle and Plato, and by all Christians, and basically by all civilizations for that matter. These virtues are recognized in the 4 points of the Southern Cross. The 4 virtues, in case you're wondering, are prudence, courage, justice, and temperance. And they exist in the classical as well as the Christian traditions. They are secular virtues. They are also active virtues. In the classical world, we've already seen that things like prudence is admired. The prudent Penelope, the wise Odysseus. Courage clearly represented as something to be admired. Justice also. And temperance, self-control, moderation. Odysseus holding himself back from doing what he wants, or even more strongly, Aeneas, not giving in to his passions, but rather doing what he wants for the glory of Rome. An example of temperance in practice right there. And Virgil himself wrote about these virtues and recommended them to us, which is why he is a fit guide here in Purgatory. Now, he's only going to be a fit guide until he gets to the top of Purgatory, because the temporal virtues are going to give way to 3 theological virtues. And I'll list them here for you. Faith, hope, and charity. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, concluding lines. What does it say? These 3 remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. These are the 3 theological virtues, unknown to the ancient world. These are added by the Christian, by revelation. So, and altogether, the temporal virtues and the theological virtues make for the 7 virtues, which are going to be needed to ascend Mount Purgatory. Pardon me. Portrayed behind me. And at the top of that, the celestial paradise. I'll see if I can blow this up so you can. And in accordance with the 7 virtue, there are 7 deadly sins listed here. This one is called superbia, it's pride. It's the worst of all of the sins. Invidiosi, envy, iracondi, wrath, rage, etc. They're presented here in Italian. So there are 7 virtues corresponding and in opposition to the 7 virtues, 7 deadly sins rather. And the first figure that Dante meets here, having said that, I hate this. I'll get rid of this now as well, is a figure who we might not recognize because he isn't a Christian figure. He is a Roman figure, the famous Roman judge whose name is Cato. You've heard of the Cato Institute in the US, maybe you haven't. But he's a man famous for his justice. And he is the judge that we saw. Remember when we were in the Inferno, we saw that there was a beast that wrapped his tail 7 times or however many times around the victims that would go down to the underworld. now we get another judge, and this is Cato. And he will be able to judge just like Virgil is, because he understands what justice is. Now, again, he's not a Christian, so he doesn't understand the theological virtues, but he understands enough to guide Dante in his ascent of Mount Purgatory, and he has light on his face. Note that he saw a solitary patriarch. Again, don't think of this in terms of biblical, but rather in terms of a father of justice. He saw him near me, his aspect worthy of such reverence that even son to father owes no more. His beard was long and mixed with white, as were the hairs upon his head, and his hair spread down to his chest in a divided tress. The rays of the holy 4 stars so framed his face with light that in my sight he seemed like one who is confronted by the sun. So he looks to some degree like a divine figure. And he asks Dante, who on earth are you? And how did you come up from the inferno? That's not possible. When you go down to the inferno, that's a descent which none rise from. That's where the sinners go. That's where sins are punished eternally. You're stuck there. There's no escape from the inferno, and yet you're coming up. How is this possible? Who are you, who against the hidden river were able to escape the eternal prison? He said, moving those venerable plumes. Who was your guide? What served you both as lantern? When from the deep night that will always keep the hellish valley dark, you were set free. The laws of the abyss, have they been broken? Or has a changed decree in heaven let you, though damned, approach my rocky slopes? My guide, Virgil, took hold of me decisively by way of words and signs and other signs, words and hands rather. He made my knees and brow show reverence. Then he, Virgil, replied, I do not come through my own self. There was a lady sent from heaven. Her pleas led me to help and guide this man. But since your will would have a far more full and accurate account of our condition, my will cannot withhold what you request. This man has yet to see his final evening. He's not dead yet. Dante is not dead. He's still alive. He's dreaming, in other words. I've already said that he's dreaming. Another indication here, though. But through his folly, little time was left before he did. He was so close to it. As I have told you, I was sent to him for his deliverance. The only road I could have taken was the road I took. I showed him all the people of perdition. Now I intend to show him those spirits who in your care are bent on expiation. Their sins are being purged from them, removed. To tell you how I led him would take long. It's a power descending from above that helps me guide him here to see and hear you. And may you approve his coming. And he is going in search of liberty. And the eternal edicts are not broken. This man's alive, and I'm not bound by Minos either, the judge of the underworld, of the inferno. That judge does not bind me. The sanction has come from heaven. That's why we're here, in case you're wondering, is effectively what he's saying here. And so Dante escapes here, and Cato is portrayed with a forked beard, a lot like Moses is portrayed in Renaissance art. He's often portrayed with a forked beard, with the forks of his beard like the 2 tablets of the law, or the 10 Commandments. Dante is thus using a lot of the symbolism of the Renaissance literature, and it's like an exodus that is referred to. And he moves on upwards and upwards, but is sent there by divine sanction, as I say. But if a lady come from heaven speeds and helps you, as you say, there's no need of flattery. It is enough indeed to ask me for her sake. Go then. So Cato says, you go on. If it's come from heaven, then I will obey. But first, wind a smooth rush around his waist and bathe his face to wash away all of heaven's or hell's stains rather, for it would not be seemly to approach with eyes still dimmed by any mist the first custodian angel won from paradise. So on he goes, and he will need to put some sign that he is fit to ascend there, and he will then do so. Let me find, oops, that's not the way. How do we get to Inferno? I guess I'll have to go back to this. How did that happen? That's how. So we'll go to Purgatorio. Give me a sec here. As he goes, he will go upward, and I'm going to skip forward to Canto 9. And in the 9th canto, Dante is carried up in a dream, 19 to 23. I, who bore something of Adam with me, feeling the need for sleep, lay down upon the grass where all 5 of us were seated at the air. And then up he goes, and he imagines that he is being carried upward as if in a dream. And he feels scorched during the dream. And he wakes up in a cold sweat with the dream of an eagle, like Saint Lucia coming to Dante, representing Dante's patron saint, who represents light and also divine grace. And we're going to find at the end of this Purgatorio that he's been summoned, yes, by his beloved Beatrice, that woman, but also Saint Lucia, the patroness of light, patron saint for light, and also by the Blessed Holy Virgin Mary. So the 3 ladies will send for him specifically. But as he approaches the gate of Purgatory, remember I said there was a gate that was there. He will go up, and there's a gate there in accordance, I probably should have something that's not written in Italian here, in accordance with the same sort of gate that we saw in hell. And it has 3 steps, guarded by an angel wearing an ashen garment with a flaming sword. And what he does at this point, before he enters into the Purgatorio proper, remember this is Canto 9, he draws 7 P's on Dante's head with a flaming sword. So it's flamed fire into his forehead, P, 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 7 times. And the P represents the Latin word for sin, peccatum. And as he ascends through Mount Purgatory, the P's that were burnt into his head disappear. And the sin is removed from him. And at the end of that, then he's ready to enter into paradise after all vestiges of sin are removed from him. But he's guilty of all 7 deadly sins in some ways, whether by thought or word or deed. He is guilty of them. And he will go up 3 steps, as I say, and the 3 steps correspond to in Catholic theology, the sacrament of confession. And they're modeled upon a 3-stage process. The first is a white step. It's a step of reflection. If you go into Tyndale's chapel, you notice that as you walk up there are 3 steps. The first step is that of reflection. It sheds the light on your own nature, the need for you to acknowledge that you're a sinner. The second step is purple. The purple reflects the emotional distress at recognizing how unworthy you are. The third step is blood red, and it represents the absolution from the sin. The blood of the Lamb has been put on you. So the 3 colors here, there's a lot of symbolism going on in Dante's work here, but it reflects the satisfaction by the works that you've committed to your penance. Remember, in Catholic theology, you have to do penance. You have to do good works to demonstrate that you're a follower of Christ. And so the sacrament of confession is represented in these 3 steps, which represent the confession of penance. And the angel here is a sort of an ecclesiastical figure, a church figure, the deputy of St. Peter, and he represents the church and the priest in his power to forgive sins. Remember, in Catholic theology, the priesthood has a stronger role than he does in Protestant theology, where the priest or the minister or the pastor is a representative of the great high priest. And it doesn't matter to some degree that what the pastor, the priest, the vicar is bringing to you is the great high priesthood of Christ, who is absolving you of your sins. I'll say more about that in a second. But here we have the priest or the angel rather, and the angel holds a silver key. And the silver key, right towards the end here, it unlocks the sin that binds him here. One is more precious, but the other needs much art and skill before it will unlock. That is the key that must undo the knot, and the knot is of sin. And the sacred key will do it. These I received from Peter. And he taught me rather to err in opening than in keeping this portal shut whenever souls pray humbly. So to be gracious. Be great, err more on the side of letting people in than keeping people out. Then he pushed back the panels of the holy gate, saying, enter, but I warn you, he who would look back returns again. Outside. No longer in purgatory, but rather in hell. Don't look back. Don't be like the lady, Lot's wife. And when the panels of that sacred portal, which are of massive and resounding metal, turned in their hinges, that even Tarpeia, when good Metellus was removed from it, for which that rock was left impoverished, did not roar nor show itself so stubborn. Hearing that gate resounded, I turned attentive. I seemed to hear inside, in words that mingled with gentle music, Te Deum Laudamus. We praise you, Lord. So for the first time, the key of sin, or the knot of sin, is unlocked by the silver key given to St. Peter. And as he opens the door, he hears the celestial music of heaven for the first time. I'll say more about music maybe some other time. Maybe I'll say it. When will I say it? I don't know. But the understanding of music in Christian theology is that there are three different types of music. One is the celestial music of the heavenly spheres. That's when I'll say it. I'll say it when we get to Paradiso. So remind me to get back to music. I'll drop music for now. But he hears the music, the celestial music, upon which all earthly music is calibrated. The reason we find it beautiful is because it reminds us of the great glory of heaven, whose music we have not yet heard. But we anticipate, and when we rejoice in music, we rejoice as a foretaste of something good, of something that's far better. It reminds us of a higher place, a better place. And that's what he hears when sin is unlocked with the silver key. And Dante acts out the process of redemption in this allegory. And he shows the function of the church in doing so. So Purgatorio then is one great ideal form of, it's like a church service. And it guides the souls to a moral healing, which is Dante's understanding what the church is supposed to do in life. It's to restore the ruins of our first parents by giving them a right moral compass. It's to make them fit for heaven, make them better people. Faith will get them into heaven, but they are, in the meantime, to be prepared to live there by living in accordance with the 7 virtues. So now Dante is initiated into purgatory proper, and as I say, he hears the music. Just like an organ in a cathedral, he hears that celestial music. So as for the organization of the Purgatorio, let me just step aside there and go to this already. I've said this already. Unlike in the Inferno, the souls change in the Purgatorio. In the Inferno, they are stuck there. They don't change. Wherever they are, they're there eternally. They don't go downward. They don't go upward. They're there in accordance with the sin they've been judged to have committed. Here, on the other hand, they all begin down here and they keep on going up until they're purged of all sin, and then they ascend to heaven. So it's a dynamic process. And in the Inferno, sins were judged in accordance with Aristotelian ethics. If you're wondering, it's the Nicomachean ethics. That's the name of the work. Whereas in Purgatorio, the sins are organized in a Christian fashion, in accordance with the 7 deadly sins. And the souls who enter must confess these sins. and then be purged of them. And the first terrace that they go to is that of superbity, or pride. The worst of the 7 deadly sins. The one of which Satan was chiefly guilty. And in Western Christian theology, pride tends to be seen as the worst of the 7 deadly sins. And as he ascends then, through a very small entrance, compared to the eye of a needle, interestingly, there's an illustration correspondent to the smallness of the entry point, the need for humility. To get into purgatory and to combat the sin of pride where you see yourself as big, you have to get very small, down into this. So you have to bend down very low. How low? As low as you can be. As little, you think of yourself as little as possible. And we get the images here of waves, and by submitting your will to think of yourself as so small, you're simultaneously admitting that God's will be done in your life. And what is clear here is that there, through the imagery of waves also that we get here, is that he and Virgil are escaping from sin through a kind of baptism. Okay, so in they go to purgatory proper, and the first terrace, as I said, is that of pride. And I'm going to talk about this specifically just for a second and just tell you that all of the stages that are administered simultaneously, and there are 3 of them, are characteristic of each of the terraces, each of the 7 terraces that he ascends. The first of them is called the scourge. It's a whip to encourage the shades to pursue love in a corrected form. Remember I said in the inferno, these were disordered loves. They were either immoderate or inspired by rage, or they were committed in fraud. So they were intemperate or fraudulent or violent. Here, they're going to be scourged in accordance with a corrected form of love. So if lust characterized the very top of the inferno, and it was the least bad, the right form of love would be marital love. Marital, chaste love. That would be the corrected form of love. This is a proper form of erotic love. You direct towards your marital spouse in holy matrimony, one of the Church's sacraments. That'll be the corrected form of love. In terms of pride, the corrected form will be humility. Just as Christ humbled himself even unto death. So you, if you wish to ascend into the presence of God, need to see yourself as a servant and act as a servant. So there'll be a scourge, and this is the whip to motivate the sinners to pursue love in a corrected form. It's a medicinal lesson. A whip sounds very punitive, but that's not the intention. It's to give a sort of a medicine against a false form of love. And we see different representations of that here, of humility. So that's the first stage, it's the scourge. The second stage is that of penance, whereby there's a punishment against the sin with in a physical form, and there's some other action correspondent. So first you get punished, but then second, there's something positive you do, like recite the Lord's Prayer in accordance with it. Thy will, not my will be done, but thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Right? So that's part of the penance. And then finally, there's the curb. And this is the counterpart of the scourge. It's an example of what is to be avoided. And the engravings of the sins in the floor of the terrace, so that the sinners may constantly contemplate and avoid sin. So the sins are also written on the floor of the terrace. So as your heads are bent down in humility, you're contemplating just how sinful sins are. So those 3 things happen simultaneously. There's the scourge, the penance, and the curb. And this represents not only Dante's sin, this is the human condition. All humanity is subject to these same 7 deadly sins, and all of them need to be corrected and replaced by the 7 virtues. Some of them the pagans will recognize, but the utmost ones they will not recognize. You will require Christian revelation to do that. And each canto ends with a beatitude, by the way, from Christ's Sermon on the Mount. And so there's a liturgical aspect to the Purgatorio. When I say the beatitude, blessed are those. So that's each canto concludes with that from this stage onward. Let me step it back here. Oh, this is the problem when I shrink it down. Okay, so let me go onward. So then he'll go through the terrace of pride, the terrace of envy, the terrace of sloth, laziness, the terrace of anger, and on upward. And as he ascends, Dante is teaching us what true love is, because everything's organized in accordance with love. In hell, in the Inferno, everything was a perversion of love, a distortion of love. In Purgatorio, we get the full picture of what love ought to be like. In the Ten Commandments, we're told what not to do, but there's a flip side to that, where there's also an aspect of it we're told what to do. So we're not to murder, but we're also to promote life. It's not enough to avoid committing murder. We also ought to promote life in its fullness. So to be pro-life, but I don't just mean the political position of our day, but to encourage life to be lived in accordance with the love of God and the love of one's neighbor. That's what to be in favor of life is, and it fulfills the seventh commandment in that sense. And so that's what Dante is learning as he ascends Mount Purgatorio. So it's it's a teaching. It's like a church service, but it's a didactic teaching. It serves a didactic teaching function here. And without getting caught up into this too much, let me come to the 26th canto in Purgatorio. Because in the 26th canto, we get to the 7th terrace. And the 7th terrace is that of lust. Remember, lust was the least bad of the sins in Inferno. Here it's the least grave, or it's the last of the 7 deadly sins. Remember, as he's been ascending, the P's have disappeared from his forehead, and he's getting more holy as he ascends. And in Canto 26, the 7th terrace, lust is purged, and as I say, Dante's Commedia really is a love poem. It's correcting the problematic portrait of love in the courtly love tradition, whereby actually adultery was promoted. Whereas here we have a right understanding of love and an epic account of love in accordance with the love story that Christ demonstrates by giving himself over to death on the cross on Good Friday all the way rising to Easter Sunday. Well, that's a sort of a love poem. It's an epic journey that he undertakes that Dante now follows. And it's a movement to a true understanding of love, directed to its true object. In our day, there's a lot of discussion about love. You know, love is love. You can love whoever you want, this sort of indiscriminate form of love. Dante's not going to have that sort of mixture of all manner of kinds of love. Whatever you call love, that's love. No, Dante has a very clear and distinct understanding that there are certain forms of love that are the contradictions of love. And there's only one that is the right understanding of love, and that's the love that Christ himself showed for us. We call that agape love. And that will norm all of the other understandings of love that will are mirror images of it to some degree. And so we could get that even from Scripture. This is love, not that we love God, but that God loved us and gave his Son as a propitiation for sin. 1 John 1, 7 and 8. If we say that we were without sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not within us. Right from Scripture, right? So, but God is love, and there is no darkness in him at all, and there's no sin in him at all. There's no unrighteousness in him at all. Dante is in full accordance with it. As I've said, it's mystical, his vision and so forth, but in many ways it jibes with anything that a Protestant would agree with on this account. Other than the idea that it's in purgatory, and this is the way to go about dealing with this, but the idea that love needs to be purged and rightly understood and is understood in accordance with Christ's own journey, that is clearly here. So while he's here, he is writing a correct love poem, and it's a movement towards a true understanding of love directed towards its true object, which is none other than the Holy Trinity. That's where he's moving in Paradiso. He's moving towards God, whose love moves everything, including the stars, which are, as I say, the last word in each of the three canticles. And Dante meets poets here in Canto 26, towards which he is sympathetic, but they're in very much, to some degree, like the lovers that he saw in Canto 5, which were punished for perverting love. And Dante acknowledges these poets. I won't name them here. Well, I will. Guido Guinizelli and Arnaud Daniel acknowledges that these poets have influenced him, and his implicit guilt is in sharing the same sin. And in Canto 27, moving very swiftly on here, Dante is put into a fire to purge him of his earthly love. And Virgil urges him forward in this and says to him at this point, reason is not enough for you at this point. Virgil represents reason. He represents virtue. Reason and virtue are not enough for you here. Here you need something that I have not got. And he needs to persuade Dante that his reward will be a higher form of love that will overcome his lust. And what was I on 27? Yes. Just as where its maker shed his blood, the sun shed its first rays, and Ebro lay beneath high Libra, and the 9th hour's rays were scorching Ganges' waves, so here the sun stood at the point of day's departure when God's angel, happy, showed himself to us. And Virgil makes it clear at this point. By the way, the final P disappears from his head at this point. So it's on his head. Why is it on his head? Why is this? Because it represents his thoughts. Remember, in accordance with the way that Dante is portraying sin is primarily a violation of reason. It's not understanding properly. Thoughts lead to actions. But the most human thing is thinking. Animals are capable of actions of sorts, not in a personal sense, but they do things. They don't think the way we do. They don't share the capacity for reason that Dante does. So the P that disappears from his forehead here disappears, and Virgil makes it clear in Canto 27 that his mission is now over. Dante can now follow his own free will. I'll get right this to the end of this. Virgil says to him, look at the sun that shines upon your brow. Look at the grasses, flowers, and the shrubs born here spontaneously of the earth. He's in the earthly paradise. Among them you can rest or walk until the coming of the glad and lovely eyes, whose eyes that, weeping, sent me to your side. Await no further word or sign from me. Your will is free, erect, and whole. To act against that will would be to err. Therefore, I crown and mitre you over yourself. So all sin has been removed from his thoughts. His will is free from the grip of sin. He only will good things now. To do anything other than that would be to err, and he's not capable of error at this point. Oh, shoot, I clicked on the wrong thing. Go away. So up he goes. And he is given a dream at this point, and the dream is of two ladies. One's Rachel and the other is Leah. And he continues on upwards into 28. I'll skip over that, and I'm going to come to the point where he meets Beatrice. Canto 30. Beatrice, if you will. When the first heaven's 7 stars had halted, the stars that never rise or set, that are not veiled, except when sin beclouds our vision, those stars that there made everyone aware of what his duty was, just as the bear below brings helmsman home to harbor, so you can guide yourself in accordance with the bear in the when you're a navigator, navigating by the stars. Then the truthful band had come first between the griffin and the 7 stars, turned toward that chariot toward their peace, and one of them, as if sent down from heaven, hymned aloud, Veni sponsa de Libano 3 times, and all the others echoed him, just as the blessed at the final summons will rise up from the dead, ready, each out of his grave, singing with new clothed voices, Hallelujah. So from the godly chariot, eternal life's messengers and ministers arose. And he hears a voice, Benedictus qui venus, blessed is he who comes. And at this point in Canto 30, Beatrice appears for the first time. And this is a wonderful moment in the Purgatorio, but it's also a very sad moment, because at this point, Virgil disappears. And so here she is. A woman showed herself to me above a white veil. She was crowned with olive boughs. Her cape was green, her dress beneath flame red. So she's colored in what? White, red, and green. The 3 colors represented by the Italian flag, representing faith, hope, and charity. And Beatrice is clothed in all 3. And those 3 theological virtues represented in her costume are things that Virgil himself did not know and could not tell him about, because it had not been revealed to him. By the way, earlier on in the canto, or in the Purgatorio, I think it was canto, gosh, and where am I going to find this? I'm not even sure I'm going to find it. I think it's canto 26, but not 100% sure. We meet a Roman poet by the name of Statius who became a Christian. And he became a Christian through Virgil's own writing. In his eclogues, I'll put the eclogue up on the course website. But in Virgil's 4th eclogue, no, I don't want to take the time. In Virgil's 4th eclogue, he talks about an age that sounds like what Isaiah talks about. The lion lying down with the lamb, the child playing with the serpent and not being bitten. It sounds like a restoration of the order of things. Statius, when he read this, thought that came to faith in Christ over this. And he credited Virgil with this vision, which he himself didn't understand. And the portrait of Virgil being given is, Virgil's like a man who held a lamp behind his own back and allowed other people to see, but he didn't see the light himself. So whatever you make of that. But that was the view of Virgil in the Christian era, that Virgil held more light in his own prophetic writings than he himself understood. And as I say, the Roman poet Statius, who was a Christian, credited Virgil for bringing him to faith through that writing. But Virgil does not see this, and he cannot take Dante any further. And within her presence, I had once been used to feeling trembling, wonder, dissolution, but that was long ago. Remember, he saw her as a 9-year-old girl. He wrote all sorts of love poetry to her. And now he's in a vision of what she's like in heaven, and it's a different experience altogether. Still, though my soul, now she was veiled, could not see her directly by way of hidden force that she could move, I felt the mighty power of old love. As soon as that deep force had struck my vision, the power that, when I had not yet left my boyhood, had already transfixed me, I turned around, and to my left, just as a little child afraid or in distress will hurry to his mother anxiously to say to Virgil, I am left with less than 1 drop of blood that does not tremble. I recognize the signs of the old flame. But Virgil had deprived us of himself. Virgil, the gentlest father, Virgil, he to whom I gave myself for my salvation, and even all our ancient mother, Lost was not enough to keep my cheeks, though washed with dew from darkening again with tears. Virgil disappears. He turns to his left. By the way, to his the word in Latin for left is sinister. Right is dexter, ambidextrous. He's got two right hands. Turn to his left. He turned towards the representation of a council that it understands the way of the world but doesn't understand of God's ways. He turned to the left and it's gone. He's not there anymore. So again, there's multiple ways you can understand this, but he turned to his left. He didn't turn to his right, he turned to his left. He turns to a council that is now only erroneous, and he's gone. And yet he laments him, he weeps in the absence of Virgil, and he's consoled by the comforting words of Beatrice. Dante, though Virgil is leaving you, do not yet weep. Do not weep yet. You'll need your tears for what another sword must yet inflict. Just like an admiral who goes to stern and proud to see the officers who guide the other ships, encouraging their tasks. It's an epic simile, by the way. So on the left of the chariot, I turned around when I'd heard my name, which of necessity I transcribe here. I saw the lady who had first appeared to me beneath the veils of the angelic flowers look at me across the stream. Though the veil she wore, down from her head, which was encircled with Minerva's leaves. Who's Minerva? Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Now she represents divine wisdom, though. No lying, no deceit. Pure wisdom, the wisdom of Christ. She has that around her forehead. Remember the purification of love. This is the right application of wisdom. The right Minerva, the true Minerva. Do not allow her to be seen distinctly. Her stance still regal and disdainful. She continued just as one who speaks but keeps until the end the fiercest parts of speech. Look here. I am Beatrice. I am. How were you able to ascend the mountain? Did you not know that man is happy here? My lowered eyes caught sight of the clear stream, but when I saw myself reflected there, such shame weighed on my brow, my eyes drew back and toward the grass, just as a mother seems harsh to her child. So did she seem to me. How bitter is the savor of stern pity. Her words were done. The angels suddenly sang, In te, Domine, speravi, in you, O Lord, we hope. But their singing did not get past pedes meus, my feet. Even as snow upon the sap-filled leaves along the spine of Italy will freeze when gripped by gusts of the Slavonian winds, then as it melts will trickle through itself, that if winds breathe north from shadeless lands, just as beneath the flame the candle melts, so I, before I'd heard the song of those whose notes always accompany the notes of the eternal spheres, was without tears and sighs, but when I heard the sympathy for me within their gentle harmonies, as if they'd said, Lady, why shame him so? Then did the ice that had restrained my heart become water and breath. It's the reversal of what we saw in the Inferno, where the breath led to the water, to the freezing. Now he thaws, and he is lifted, and he breathes the free air. So there's the last stage. The sin has been removed from him, but his soul is being released from that now, and he's glad. And from my breasts and through my lips and eyes, they issued anguished, still, etc. But as he goes on through this, he moves upwards through Mount Purgatory. Let me come to the end of Purgatory. And come to the end of this. To the Roman poet Statius, who's there, come with him. If reader, this is how he concludes the Purgatorio. If reader, I had ampler space in which to write, I'd sing, though incompletely, that sweet draught for which my thirst was limitless. But since all of the pages predisposed for this, the second canticle, are full, the curb of art will not let me continue. From that most holy wave I now returned to Beatrice, remade As new trees are renewed when they bring forth new boughs, I was pure and prepared to climb unto the stars. So again, he concludes the canticle with the word stars, and he now goes, he's at the top of the celestial paradise, and he will move up through the heaven of heavens now. So he's in the earthly paradise, and the realm of fire, he'll go up through the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the fixed stars, and through the prima mobile, and up into the heavens of heavens. He'll go on upwards through this. So it begins in the inferno through the bowels of the earth, up Mount Purgatory, and then up into heaven. At that point, he will hear the celestial music. So let me say something about the music. I said I was going to say something about the music. It'll be very brief, but something about the music. In the 5th century, there's a Christian writer by the name of Boethius, famous for a work called The Consolation of Philosophy. But he wrote a treatise on music, De Musica, which was taught in Christian universities all the way up into the 18th and 19th century. So music was one of the 7 liberal arts, and it was understood to correspond to mathematics and to astronomy and to some degree to geometry. Those are the 4 subjects of the quadrivium. And music is held to be a science as precise as arithmetic is, and astronomy likewise. And the spheres of the planets create a certain celestial music called the music of the spheres. You'll read about it, actually, you'll sing about it even in evangelical hymns. They talk about the music of the spheres. And the music of the spheres are correspondent to what we will call the scale of music that we understand to this day. When you learn music and learn to read sheet music, you see the lines on the page and you get, C, B, A, right? And all the way up to what? Or 8 notes, right? Those are correspondent to the celestial spheres. And the music that we hear, actually we can't hear, because it lies beyond the realm of the moon, which is a symbol of mutability, but it's a celestial music that Boethius posits corresponds to our earthly music. So when we have a scale of music and we can hear it, and the combination of the notes sounds beautiful to us, that's because it is a correspondence to the celestial music, which is far more beautiful. And so there's celestial music, there's human music, or there's instrumental music rather, which includes the voice, and then there's the music of the breast. There's a music within us. So why does music please us? Why does it cure us? Why does it settle us? Why does it move us? Why do we love music? Boethius has an answer to that, because it reminds us of heaven. Because it's a foretaste of heaven. When it's done beautifully, when it's done in correspondence with the scales of music, in accordance with the music that is correspondence with the mathematics, in other words, beauty is conjoined with truth, then we are given an anticipation of heaven. And so music has always been a part of Christian worship services. Always. Because it's an anticipation of heaven. And that's what Dante is portraying here as he then goes up into the Paradiso. He will hear the music of the spheres. So let me come back here and come to the Paradiso. And in the Paradiso, we will get a picture of divine love that we already get here right at the outset here. So let me just read these words. The glory of the one who moves all things. How does he move them? Through love. Permeates the universe and glows in one part more and in another less. I was within the heaven that receives more of his light. And I saw things that he who from that height descends, forgets, or cannot speak, nor nearing its desired end, our intellect sinks into an abyss so deep that memory fails to follow it. Nevertheless, so it's an intellectual ascent. He's not actually voyaging there. It's an intellectual voyage. And as he goes up, as much as I within my mind could treasure of the holy kingdom shall now become the matter of my song. O good Apollo, the sun. O good Apollo, for this final task makes me the vessel of your excellence, because I'm going into the realms of light. That you to merit our loved laurel ask. Until this point, one of Parnassus's peaks. Parnassus is the mountain on which the muses reside. So again, referring to the inspiration, the divine inspiration of the epic muse. Suffice for me, but now I face the test. The agon that is left, I need both crests. Enter into my breast, within me breathe the very power that you made manifest when you drew Marsyas up from his dim sheath. O godly force, if you lend yourself to me that I might show the shadow of the blessed realm inscribed within my mind. Then you should see me underneath the tree you love. There I shall take as crown the leaves of which my theme, and you shall make me worthy. Let me come to this again. Oh, I have to, every time I do this. And I want to then come towards the end of this. And you're going to have to bear with me for a second here in preparation for that. That'll work. Notre Dame. Let's see it. There you go. This is the vision he's going to portray at the end of the Inferno. The Paradiso. If you enter into a cathedral made in the medieval period, they're all constructed like a cross. And the cross, at the end of the cross, it's pointing towards Jerusalem as you look towards the altar. And behind that are these famous rose windows. And in the rose window, you'll see portrayed here some figure. Sometimes it's the Trinity. Sometimes it's the Blessed Virgin Mary with Christ on her lap, as is the case here, because this is in Notre Dame, it's dedicated to the Virgin Mary, our Dame, Our Lady. And what you are getting then is, even though you're in an earthly service, you're looking at heaven. It's an anticipation of that. So Dante has in mind that sort of vision here, and he will literally portray it in what we will call the rose window. And Canto 32 will give this vision of the rose from Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. But he will pass on upwards through this to see this vision. And as he ascends, he gets closer and closer to pure light, the light of the intellect, not a visual light at all. The eye is not capable of seeing this light, and it is the true good that is seen, and it's a state of mind where the divine intellect is now fully operational within the human mind. That's what he's portraying from this point onward, from Canto 30 onwards. And the language that he uses to describe the Empyrean, where is the Empyrean? Is this it? No, get rid of Purgatory. I don't need a Purgatory anymore. I now need Paradiso. Up here, as he ascends to the Imperio, the Empyrean, heaven, he is going outside space and time to a place where God resides. And Dante wants us to follow him beyond the limits of sight, but also the limits of language. And this is where he fails, but this is why it's such a mystical poem, I think. And Dante sees the dazzling radiance of an incredibly pure and intense light, a light that illuminates his mind and to some degree the light of God, and represents pure being as it is without any limitation on it. And the more he looks into the light, the more his sight is purified. So it has a healing power. It gives him powers he didn't possess previous to this. He can no longer find earthly analogies to help us, because those are all misrepresentations of the true light. And so his eyes are sort of baptized by the light. And as he ascends, he comes to this grand vision of the rose. Let me get to the rose. I should have just not bothered with the, oh no, I can do this. 31 and 32. And 33. And then he speaks to the Virgin Mother, Mary. Because remember, this is, Mary had cooperated with Beatrice and Saint Lucia to bring Dante to this mystical vision. And what we see in the rose is the ideal form of the church and the state, which is represented being like a swarm of bees. In Canto 32 at any rate. I've got 33 here. Well, that's not very helpful. Correcting myself the whole time. Oh no, it is 32. That's what I want. Let's move beyond this. All of these women and the grandmother of the singer who cried Miserere mei, and that you can see from the rank, moving through the rose, from petal unto petal gave to each her name. And from the seventh rank, just as they did within the ranks above, the Hebrew women follow, ranging downward, dividing all the tresses of the rose. But as I say, the rose is this image of the rose window. And they're all the wall by which the sacred stairs divide, depending on the view of Christ with which their faith aligned. Upon one side, there where the rose is ripe with all its petals, are those whose faith was in the Christ to come. And on the other side, that semicircle whose space is broken up by vacant places, sit those whose sight was set upon the Christ who had already come. So those who lived before Christ, those who lived after Christ. And just as on this side, to serve as such a great partition, there is in the throne in glory of the Lady of Heaven, the seats that range below it, so opposite the seat of the great John, who always saintly suffered both the desert and martyrdom, and then 2 years of hell, serves to divide. Below him sit, assigned to this partition, Francis, Benedict, and Augustine, and others, rank on rank, down to this center of the rose. So we see the great saints represented around here, around the rose. You see the circles within circles, and so forth. Now see how deep is God's foresight. Both aspects of the faith shall fill his garden equally. Those who anticipated Christ and those who saw Christ. Both sides. And know that there below the transverse row that cuts across the two divisions sit souls who are there for merits not their own, but with certain conditions others' merits. For all of these are souls who left their bodies before they had the power of true choice. Anyway, on with that. And then on down to 31 and 32. Okay, so now I don't need to skip back anymore. Thank you for that. Nope, too big. So we'll skip with that. So the final is a dedication to the Virgin Mary, and he finds at this point that the Beatrice has disappeared, along with Saint Bernard. She's gone away, and Saint Bernard has replaced her as his guide, because now he's going to be a mystical vision. And Bernard of Clairvaux is really the father of the contemplative medieval mind. So he's a mystic by all accounts, a Christian mystic. And he is the one who gives Dante's final vision here. That is represented by the vision of the lady. You are so high that you can so intercede that he who would have grace but does not seek your aid may long to fly but has no wings. Your loving kindness does not only answer the one who asks, but it is often ready to answer freely long before the asking. In your compassion in you is pity, in you is generosity, in you is every goodness found in any creature. This man who from the deepest hollow in the universe up to this height has seen the lives of spirits one by one. This is Bernard speaking. now pleads with you through grace to grant him so much virtue that he may lift his vision higher still, might lift it towards the ultimate salvation. And I, who never burned for my own vision more than I burned for his, do offer you all my prayers, and pray that they may not fall short, that with your prayers you may disperse all of the clouds of his mortality, so that with the highest joy be his to see. This too, says St. Bernard, O Queen, who can do what you would, I ask of you, that after such a vision his sentiments preserve their perseverance. May your protection curb his mortal passions. See Beatrice, see how many saints with her? They join my prayers, they clasp their hands to you, and they return to her. Bernard signaling, he smiles to me. He looks onwards and upwards and inwards, and the profundity he sees is beyond his ability to articulate, really. But he does say this: what little I recall is to be told from this point on in words more weak than those of those whose infant tongue still bathed at the breast. Like an infant can barely make a noise. And not because more than one simple semblance was in the living light at which I gazed, for it is always what it was before, but through my sight, which as I gazed grew stronger, that sole appearance, even as I altered, seemed to be changing. And the essence of the light, 3 circles appeared to me, 3 different colors. All of them were of the same dimension. This is a vision of the Trinity that he gets at the end. One circle seemed reflected by the second, as rainbow is by rainbow. The third seemed fire breathed equally by those 2 circles. How incomplete is speech, how weak when set against my thought. And this, to what I saw, is such, to call it little is too much. And then he speaks to eternal light, which begotten so appeared in you as light reflected when my eyes were watched with the attention for the same time, and my own wings were far too weak to find their way to the human effigy, the picture of Christ in the Trinity. But then my mind was struck by light that flashed, and with this light received what it had asked. Here force failed my high fantasy, but my desire and will were moved already, like a wheel revolving uniformly, by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Concludes the poem. So he gets the vision of the triune God that he had longed for, and he returns to himself with a new vision, which he then tells in what he's just written down. But it's a dream vision sequence, very mystical, very mysterious, very profound in some ways, with a certain type of revelation to it. It's a magnificent poem. People like the Divine Comedy. Did you like the Divine Comedy? It's extraordinarily beautiful. It's powerful. It's moving in some ways. I feel somewhat churlish and as a Protestant critiquing it, but I do think that there's things that are lost in this portrait that we've seen here, which I've got on the board behind me, which is the Martin Luther's point about purgatory and the God that is portrayed. The God that we see in Scripture is not a God that we don't know or can't know. It's not the unknown God. It's the revealed God. And the God is not unknowable, he's hidden. He hides himself from us. He's not invisible. He conceals himself, but he also reveals himself. And he reveals himself in his word, and he reveals him in particular at the word at the cross. And what he reveals himself in at the cross is something that the world totally cannot see nor understand. But in accordance with Luther's theology, which I hold to as somebody in the Reformed tradition, the hidden God is actually the revealed God, and the revealed God is still hidden to us. It doesn't suit the human mind. But we see it at the cross where if you think about it, what the world perceives as shame, because what's more shameful than seeing a naked man crucified in the presence of women and children and all comers? Remember, Jews never go about naked in public, but Christ is crucified naked. There's only shame in that. Is there anything other than weaknesses? This is a man who can't come down from the cross. He's pathetic. He's broken. He's incapable of freeing himself. The world sees weakness. They see the folly of everything that Christ preached. He proclaimed that he was God, that he prayed to his Father in heaven. He's accused of being a blasphemer for it, but that we see the folly of what he's done. We see that he's a man condemned. He's condemned to death. We see that he represents sin. After all, the people who are crucified are sinners. They break the law. The Jewish, the Pharisees call upon him to be crucified as well. They can't do it, but they say that he should because he's the man of sin. And finally, we see the portrait of death. What's the cross is the universal symbol of death. It's the Christian symbol. But what the world perceives is the contradiction of what the truth is. The truth is that in the shame of the cross, we see God's glory. It's God's glory to do what Christ himself chose to undertake. He predicted that he would do it, and he would do it for the glory of God the Father in heaven. Secondly, in his weakness, he exhibited God's strength because he overcame sin and death. What could be more powerful? What more powerful event has there ever been in human history than the death that took place on Calvary over 2,000 years ago? Because the whole of human history is measured by that point in time. It's the most powerful event that's ever happened at that point of weakness. In the apparent folly of the cross, there's the wisdom of God, which is not the wisdom of the Greeks or the Romans. It's the wisdom of God. And rather than condemnation, there's acquittal, not for Christ, although he is raised from the dead because he's done nothing wrong, but also those who have faith in him. We're acquitted from sin. We don't need to go to purgatory because we have placed faith in Christ, who is our great high priest. He's our effectual high priest. And he atones for us. He is the offering, the one full offering for sin, to which nothing can be added and nothing taken away. And so he is acquitted, and rather than sin, we are acquainted with righteousness. The righteousness of God is demonstrated. And finally, rather, in the death of our Lord, we find our life. That is the message that's rather different than the emphasis that Dante puts. For all of that, I delight in Dante. I think that there are things that are misrepresented here, or better represented rather in the view of God as the Deus absconditus. So I'll put this up here. Rather than the Deus incognito, which the modern world talks about, we can't really know what God's like. We're just guessing. We have the Deus abscondito, the hidden God. And the hidden God is the revealed God. And we see God's revelation at the cross. That's how we know what the Father's like. We see it in the Son. Which is why Christ says that no one comes to me, to the Father, except through the Son. Right? Anyway, I'm done for today. See you next time.